not working. We can't shoot right now. And you have a first assistant director coming as you're trying to figure out what's going on. How much longer? How much longer? How much longer? And you like, well, give me like 5 minutes to, see what's going on. Okay. And, 5 minutes goes by and they're like, okay, are we ready? And you're like, not quite yet. Hold on. They're like, should we send the actors back to their trailers? Okay. So that certainly happened more than once.
They'll actually ask you, should we send them back? Wow.
Because they, actors don't want to freaking just stand there while they're waiting, because is it 3 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Is it,
yeah.
And that's an expensive wait.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. And, if it's a little something, you're like, okay, well, that one monitor is just going to be off, or we're going to just turn it away from camera. But if it's something in a newsroom where all of a sudden, this happened on Deep Impact, where all of a sudden we were getting noise and interference on a bunch of the displays. And one of my engineers starts like ripping stuff apart in the control room. I'm like, holy guys, and we're like, okay, we're going to need a little time. You don't want to be the guy that's the one who's responsible for the production falling behind, or not making their day. And some of the most stressful times of my life have been, when things are not working properly and you're trying to make them work. Or the other great one is like when you have your computer and you've set everything for the particular scene, and it's, you just have to hit play, but it's not saving. It won't save. And you're like, just don't crash. And, you're just hoping that you don't have to, something, it doesn't reboot in the middle of something or overheat. So yeah, there's always now,
is it this, but is it the stress? Like, that you might cause, production to be behind and all that money, but do you get like the ADs coming in yelling? Is that does that not happen? Does that happen? Or
no, that certainly happens.
Yeah.
You might get initially a, one of the lower tiered PAs or ADs come in with a walkie and they're like, what's going on? Or you get on the radio, guys, what's going on? But then there's always the thing where it's like it escalates. We had a thing on Picard where on the first episode of season 3, where we literally had less than a week to convert the entire Stargazer into the Titan with all new graphics. Shooting on that first day and not having everything quite ready, and the director getting very frustrated, which understandably, but we were spread so thin because we were doing that, and we had 2 other sets that were going that, and the graphics team just could not manage to keep up with all the requests and the new stuff. And it's like there were like little holes in the consoles where there was like black, where they didn't finish like certain pieces, or something wasn't ready, and the director like called the producer to come and talk to me, and I'm like, we're doing the best we can. I'm not ones building the thing, and I'm like, the graphics company will provide us all the elements to be put in post at their cost. So they've already agreed to that because they know they're behind. So, it's like once I'm like, guys, this is what we're dealing with. Here's, it's nobody's fault per se. This is just, there's just too much to do at the time.
Well, along those lines, too much to do. Is it the fact that there's not enough budget? Everyone's trying to rush everything out. Like, what is the ultimate reason for that kind of falling behind? Is it too many requests and not enough time? Is it understaffed?
Yeah, it was just, well, that was a schedule situation where they're trying to do that they have certain requirements where maybe there's actors that need to be someplace else, and so they need to get their stuff shot. The actors are much more important than, are the graphics guys or the playback guys going to have this ready? They're going to do it. We know what they're going to have to do it. That we kind of are like lower on the totem pole there. So, in certain shows, we actually get to go, hey guys, this is too much. I need at least a day to do, or 5 days or whatever. There were certainly situations where the graphics team could not keep up with the requests of, and especially on that one bridge, because we had 37 or 38 unique feeds to all the different displays that all needed different graphics. So it's not like on a normal show where you might have 4 or 5 displays that you have to build. Here you needed, there was a ton of new stuff, and it's all story specific. And you have certain directors who are much more demanding of, I want, when this particular cue comes or this line comes, I want something on the screen to show that. Whereas another director is like, that's all right, I'm going to just be on their face. You don't have to build me anything. So you'll all of a sudden it's like, instead of 4 cues that we have to build, there's 15. And it's not just on this display, it's on that display and that display and that display. And these are all different and they all have to be built. They all have to have cue points. And, or you have a director go, I'm not really sure. It could be here or here. And you're like, okay, that's like not just a simple thing where you go, it's a different display. It's a different resolution. It's a different size, a different shape. So there was a lot of that on Picard. There was a lot of last minute stuff because you also are getting new scripts.
You're doing the next show, the episode. Yeah.
Or you have a director who changes his mind or their mind and they're like, I want it there. And then you get to the set and they're like, can we put it over there instead? And you're like, I'm going to need let me call my graphics team, because the graphics team wasn't there on, they were in Chicago. So
they're not set dressers there that can.
Yeah.
So how do you manage, when you're in the midst of production, how do you manage that kind of intense pressure all the time? I mean, you're working through lunch or you're just, everyone's just trying to get through stuff. How do you just get through and then?
I mean, the long days too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, luckily it's, for the most part, it's gotten better with the long days because of the new union rules, at least on the shows that I've been on. But yeah, I mean, I've certainly been on shows. I mean, even when we did Nemesis, we were doing 16, 18-hour days, and it got so bad that one of the Paramount executives came to set and sat on set to make sure that at 12 hours, they were wrapping up. And on those types of shows, I'll get back to the stress level, but it's like you get to lunch after 6 hours and then you look and you're like, hey, another 12 hours, we get to go home. Dealing with that stress kind of varies depending on the project and who you're working with. As I've gotten a little older and more mature, I've learned to not, most of the time, to try to not, take it out on my crew or other people to, just level with them. It's like, okay, guys, here's our situation. We really can't mess this up. We got to deal with this and let's figure out how to deal with it. But, of course, there's always times where it's overwhelming and it's a lot to deal with. Luckily, I'm pretty good at letting kind of emotions, once they're past, I can kind of let it go, which, is sometimes good and sometimes bad because you don't always remember necessarily oh shit, I should really avoid this thing. I mean, again, I've gotten much better as I've gotten older. My ADHD, I've kind of learned to work with, to kind of go, okay, I need to make sure this is done properly ahead of time so that we're not waiting until the last second and then dealing with this huge stress. So that's one of the things that I've done is learned a lot of things to do to try to lower the potential for stress. And again, equipment failures where you'll have, you make sure that you have 3 different ways to do something technically so that, you have fail safe. And this just happened literally a week ago. I was on a job on a commercial, and we had rented a 40,000 lumen projector that arrived late and then had initial problems that we finally got working, fired it up, and then it was glitching all over the place. And we didn't have time. They're like, well, we're going to bring you a new one. I'm like, I don't have time. The crew's already out there. So luckily I had brought some of my other projectors as a replacement just in case, because I was like, okay, I don't want to be relying on this thing. So that's one of the things that I've learned to do to kind of, reduce stress level and not be able to, because you just don't want to be the guy who goes, sorry, this is not working. We can't shoot this today.
Just before we did this recording, I was listening to a podcast where they were going in depth about how, with all the details, how difficult it is to maintain a marriage and a family in this industry. And they went into with regards to scheduling and, having young kids and being out of sync with them, even if you're just away for a month or even a few weeks, and how that really affects the relationship and stuff like that. I believe you mentioned to us that you have family members that are that are marriage and family therapists.
Yeah, my wife.
Yeah. So
yes,
having a partner does that. I imagine that makes this easy. That I imagine it makes this easier to maintain. Maybe not, but I imagine you do see in the industry a lot of people struggling with having a family, and that has to have an effect on top of the stresses of 18-hour days.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to lead to some real deep struggles, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had this discussion with my wife over the years as well about it's tough to go from your job where you're respected, people do what you ask them to do, you get praise, and then you come home and it's like, the kids don't want to listen to what you're asking them to do. And, everybody's tired because they've been doing their own stuff. And it's like, can we clean up the house? And, nobody wants to hear you complain about stuff. And and so you kind of go from this, it's like this world, and especially with production where it's, it's not like a normal 9-to-5 job. You're
right
in the intense, environment, and you're doing these like incredible things oftentimes. And, and now with like a Star Trek, you get like fan adoration and, all this other positives. And people, really finding what you do fascinating, and then dealing with, then you got to come back to reality and live as a normal person in a house, and changes your, you kind of, it's been very difficult at times where, you get angry and frustrated because it's like, this one place I'm treated this way, and in this other place I'm treated, at home, it's like not, you don't get that.
You're a mere mortal at home.
Yes, exactly. And and it's a tired, you're tired and don't want to necessarily have to deal with all these other issues at home. And so, yeah, there is a definite level of understanding and stress that is involved in this. And we still deal with that today. I mean, it's not, we've had our struggles as any family, I'm sure, has with this type of environment, working in this type of environment. And I have a very creative family. So everybody has their own like things that they're doing. My son, who's, in his 27, 28, he likes LARPing. So live action role playing. So he's building props. We have our 3D printer, and he's building stuff, for that. And he's off, in Northern California doing his LARPing thing. And when you're doing the things that you love, it's a whole other, versus like, oh, can you put the dishes away?